Hello, and welcome back to Tita Takes. If you're new to my channel, Tita Takes is a platform where we highlight, celebrate, and really give credit to creative works of literary and performance art created by people of color. And if you are a subscriber, welcome back. Today, I wanted to recap episodes 1 through 3 of Atlanta. As you know, this is the final season for our show, one of my favorite shows, and it's been a long time coming. I mean, the show has been out for years and years, and Donald Glover and the team have definitely gotten their accolades. I believe they've won a few Emmys, and it being the last season, I really wanted to make sure to give its justice and give its credit on my channel, talk about some of the themes, talk about some of the impact that Donald Glover has had on television with his show format, because as you know, if you do watch Atlanta, he has a really unique abstract mind. In my opinion, one of the best TV writers of our time, and so I wanted to celebrate the last season with you, talk about some of the episodes that I've already aired, and really get into it. If you haven't yet, go ahead and click subscribe to my channel. Also, please like this video, y'all. I am so close to 1,000 subscribers. Okay, like I'm at right now, as of this recording, I'm at 935. Mind you, I started my YouTube channel October 13th, 2021, and we are towards the end of September right now. So if we can get me to 1,000 subscribers before my 1-year anniversary on YouTube, that would just absolutely mean the world to me. That was one of my goals starting this channel, was to reach 1,000 subscribers before the 1-year mark, and I am so close. I can taste it, y'all, and I know you can help me get there. So if you watch my videos and you just haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe down below. I really appreciate it. Here we go, Atlanta season 4 episode 1. It's titled The Most Atlanta, which the episode starts off with a riot in a Target, and there are people looting the Target, stealing things, and Darius is just walking casually at a very leisure, slow pace into this Target, and it's just in such Darius fashion he just marches to the beat of his own drum constantly during these seasons as we've gotten to know him, and this is no different. Darius is still Darius, and that's what the opening is really trying to communicate, I believe. So he's just casually strolling through this Target as everyone else is running, screaming, grabbing products, and just causing havoc, wreaking havoc on this Target. Darius goes up to the counter, attempting to return and I think exchange actually an air fryer that he bought that he decided that he didn't want anymore. And the sales associate, which at first I'm like, why are you still behind the counter? Either get out or steal some things and get out. Like, why are you still there, like, working? And he looks at Darius like he's crazy, because he's like, what do you see what's happening behind you? And Darius is like, yeah, that's wild. Like, so Darius walks out of the Target, and he turns around to some really loud noise, and he turns around and he sees a woman in a wheelchair holding a knife, threatening to stab people, and a group of looters, people who are looting the Target, hitting her with the fire extinguisher. And I thought, this looks really familiar. I feel like, knowing Donald Glover, knowing how he does Atlanta, he does a lot of memes and things that go viral, right? And he adds that to the story and integrates it into the story. And I remember this was actually a viral video of during the George Floyd protests in Minneapolis. People were looting, and there was a woman in a wheelchair, and people were like, on the internet, they were like, look at these people, they're evil, they're attacking disabled people in wheelchairs. Come to find out, after a few other videos are released, or a few days later, as we learn more information, this is the same woman who was actually threatening to stab people on the streets, innocent people on the streets, and she was actually standing, moving around. And so I thought it was just so funny that Donald Glover included this meme and integrated this into this episode of this show. And throughout the rest of this episode, Darius is running from this woman who is following him to no end. And I believe she says, "I'd rather die than let you steal." And to the very end of the episode, Darius is running away from this woman in a wheelchair wielding a knife. I think this is just symbolic of the Karens of the world. Like, she is the archetype of a Karen. The lengths that Karens will go in order to prove a point or do what's right, I truly don't know. And I really think that we have to have some kind of clinical studies on Karens. I don't know, what do y'all think? Tell me down in the comments, because Toni Morrison says that she used to say that racism is a sickness. Like, she really believed that racism is a sickness, it's a disorder. Like, it just doesn't make sense, the lens through which she operates. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, and neither do Karens and they're the high horse that they think that they're on. Let's talk about that down in the comments, because I mean, Karens of the world, they really think they're doing good. I don't know. Let's talk about it down in the comments. I mean, we could talk about this for days, honestly. Moving on. So Paperboy is stuck in crazy Atlanta traffic. And I've lived in high traffic areas. I've lived in LA. I've lived in New York. And I've visited Atlanta. I've visited Chicago. And of the 4 high traffic cities, I have to say Atlanta takes the cake. So Paperboy is in the car when he hears over the radio that one of his favorite rappers passed away. His name is Blue Blood. And the guy on the radio actually says that Blue Blood, that's a tongue twister. Blue Blood actually passed away 3 months ago, which is something to note and to remember for later on in the season. And in our fashion of, like, you know, when someone we really admire passes away, especially a rapper, musician, Paperboy starts playing his music in memoriam to this rapper that he really thought was so prolific, and he describes as a legend and revolutionary. And it just reminds me of, you know, when Nipsey Hussle died. I lived in LA at the time, and how devastating that was, and how much of his music I started consuming after the fact. Darius is in the car with Paperboy, and when he plays his new music, Darius then says, you know, I never heard this track. And Paperboy says, yeah, he had an album released 5 months ago. This is his newest album. And Darius then responds saying, I didn't even know he came out with an album. A lot of the writing in Atlanta, it wraps around. It comes full circle. So these conversations that could be seemingly throwaway lines really come full circle once you watch the whole episode and you realize the culmination of that story and why these conversations are happening. Paperboy is listening to the music, and really listening to the music, mind you. Blue Blood is actually trying to communicate, give directions in his lyrics. And he's at a gas station, and he's in the lyrics, Blue Blood is talking about a barbecue joint, and Paperboy looks up and sees a barbecue joint. That's what it's called, D&D, I believe. And he says, order the zoo pie at the D&D barbecue spot. And so Paperboy's like, hold on, let me go inside this barbecue joint and order the zoo pie. And he does. And as a result, Paperboy is taken on a full scavenger hunt. It turns out that Blue Blood is sending his listeners, his fans, on the scavenger hunt. And at the end of the scavenger hunt, Paperboy actually ends up at Blue Blood's funeral. There at his funeral, Paperboy is met with Blue Blood's wife. And she says that only 5 people have showed up. And this funeral has been going on for, I believe it was a month or 2 at least, which, you know, Paperboy can't believe. And she says, and I quote, all you had to do is listen to the music. And Paperboy is really taken aback by how few people actually listened to his music, to Blue Blood's music, to end up at this funeral. And I think he finds that really tragic and sad. Turns out that Blue Blood knew he was dying. I believe he was sick, and purposefully wrote this last album to get people to his funeral since he knew the end was coming. And I think that as Paperboy is grappling with his career and where he wants to go, the impact that he has, I mean, Paperboy is a real true artist, and I do believe that. I mean, that character, his character, he's really honest in his expression and his music. And although he's led astray waywardly constantly, and I think that's what being an artist in a music business, you know, a business like the music industry is. It's like you want to be creative, and that's the love that you have, but you're constantly being led in different directions, directions that don't necessarily feel honest to you as a creative. And I think that Paperboy is really grappling with this, his impact. What does it mean to be a rapper? What kind of legacy am I leaving? Are people really listening to the music? Am I changing lives that I think I am, the way other artists have impacted me and changed my life? And I see all of that kind of brewing in his head, and to see this legend had 5 people show up in his funeral, meaning only 5 people were truly listening to his music. I think that was very shocking to him. I think it was very devastating to him as well. Moving on to Ern and Van's storyline. This one was really weird and funny in like true Atlanta fashion. So Ern and Van are at Atlantic Station, which is apparently a very popular mall in Atlanta. I don't think I've been. I might have been. I don't know. I'm glad I didn't because of what happened. So slowly they figure out that all of their exes are in this Atlantic Station in a weird loop, like they're stuck inside Atlanta Station. They've talked to a few, and it seems like they've tried to make their way out, but they can't seem to find their exit, but they're also not cognizant of the fact that they've been stuck in Atlantic Station. And it seems like only Ern and Van really understand what's happening, and no one else really does. What I took away from it was, you know, Ern and Van kind of outgrowing Atlanta. You know, there's a lot of people who are kind of stuck in the city where they were born, or stuck in the city where they've spent a long time if they haven't traveled or really experienced life outside of the city where they grew up, or the city where they've lived for a long time. And Ern and Van are coming from Europe, so they've been able to travel, and they've been able to kind of see the world, and coming back home and just kind of being in this twilight zone of seeing all of the people that you have history with stuck in this kind of loop in this very familiar location, I thought communicated them just kind of outgrowing Atlanta and maybe needing to leave. So my assumption is that they're going to leave Atlanta towards the end of the season, or maybe that's how the season ends, because they're finding their way out of this Atlantic Station to no avail, until the very end, where they find a dark tunnel, go through it, and they end up at Blue Blood's funeral. At the end of the episode, Darius meets them all in the parking lot, still running from the lady in the wheelchair. And at the end of the episode, they drive away all together in a car. I think the ending of episode 1, the most Atlanta was trying to tell us that Atlanta is back, and Atlanta is in Atlanta this season. You know, season 3, we were in Europe. People didn't really like that. Them driving away all together in a car, kind of making loops around Atlanta. They all traveled around Atlanta that episode, right? Darius running away from the lady, Blue Blood going on this scavenger hunt. I guess not Ern and Van. They were just going around in circles at Atlantic Station. But I really think this episode wrapped up trying to tell us that, you know, Atlanta's back in true Atlanta, classic Atlanta fashion. Episode 2 was titled The Homeliest Little Horse. Absolutely love this episode. This is 100% my favorite episode of the season so far. I scrimped, okay, at the end when we found out how this episode wrapped up. I mean, I truly enjoyed it. So this episode has 2 storylines going on at once. Ern is on his way to therapy, and he actually talks to Paperboy, and Paperboy is like asking for the Hulu password or something random, and you know, Ern's like, yeah, I'm on my way to therapy, and like, Paperboy just makes fun of him, and it's like, oh, he's rich off my 15%. He's just giving it away. He's just giving money away. And I love that we start with that kind of mentality, or Earn receiving that perspective, because that's how a lot of people respond to people getting therapy. I mean, I don't think it's totally socially acceptable yet. We're getting there slowly, and as people are starting to normalize seeking mental health care, but ultimately, especially in the Black community, it's like unbecoming to like admit that you need help. Like, that's not something that is cool. You know, like everyone wants to act like we got it together and we don't need help. And, you know, also therapy is expensive. So if you get therapy, you're rich and you're just, you know, wasting money away. And I really love that that's how it started. Like, I feel like we had to have that conversation first, because I think Donald Glover knew people watching this who didn't agree with therapy would also think that. So it's like kind of like something that they can hold on through to get them through to the end of the episodes. Earn is sitting in the chair in the therapist's office, and you know, he talks about having pain. First of all, he's getting texts and getting phone calls and answering them, and you know that Earn is there, but he's not there, right? Like, he's in his phone. When somebody texts us, and we respond, it takes us out of the present, and we're in this now. We're in this conversation. We're in the text conversation and not being present. And so the therapist takes his phone and he's like, this is expensive, right? Like, pay it, let's make the most out of, your time here, an hour, 30 minutes, however long it is. And Earn starts to tell the therapist about his pain. Like, he has a shooting pain, I believe he says, up his arm. And the therapist is like, why do you think that is? And he says, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. I'm as the most successful I've ever been. I'm making the most money I've ever made. And he goes into all these material things, describing why his life is good and why it doesn't make sense why he's having these bodily issues that might be connected to how he feels emotionally. Then the therapist says, okay, well, how are things at home? And Earn hesitates a bit, and we come to realize that the reason why he's sitting in the chair and the reason why he's experiencing pains is because he's having a lot of anxiety about Van, about his daughter, about their future, and that's kind of the root of what he needs help with in therapy. And it turns out Earn actually got a job offer in LA, and that's the root of all of his issues, is that he's nervous about how Van's gonna take it, how it's gonna affect his family, which I think the therapist knew going in. Like, it's not the money, it's not the material things that are affecting your body and your mental health. It's the emotional things. It's the things that truly matter, the things that you truly care about, which was a really nice revelation to see unravel. Then Earn goes on to tell the story of why he was expelled from Princeton. This performance that Donald Glover gives, telling the story, iconic. Like, 10 out of 10. Like, if I could give an Emmy for one monologue of a scene, like, I would absolutely give it to Donald Glover. He does an incredible job, and he goes into kind of the place where Earn has operated from season 1, was this theme of spite. And he says, I love spite. It's a pure, powerful thing. It gave me courage, and I can count on it. And the therapist responds saying, spite can be very powerful, but it can also leave you depressed and empty. Goal stops becoming yours, starts becoming a book written by somebody else, somebody with no incentive for your well-being. And I think this was a really good revelation for Earn, to realize the place where he was operating from was not from a place of true expression or emotion. It was in a place of revenge, of spite, of trying to prove something for someone else instead of for himself, fundamentally. And I found that really, really interesting. And him recounting this story, there's so many stories of people of color, in this instance Black people, attending a PWI Ivy League like Princeton, and the pressures that people don't really understand. Like, specifically, like, white people have never had the experience of being like walking around on eggshells, like being Black in a PWI, being Black in any predominantly white space. It's like walking around guilty until proven innocent, that at the drop of the hat, once you let your guard down or you look unpresentable or you do something that's less than, you know, exemplary, you are a criminal. You are not the exception to the rule anymore. You're just like everyone else. These implicit biases that people have when it comes to people of color. And I found that, you know, him recounting the story, I felt all of those stresses, how these things are really affect you, like compounded along the way. And I definitely got that feeling. It was kind of therapeutic hearing him recount this, having been in his situation before and trying to avoid those spaces now, to be honest. The next time Ern comes into therapy, he's got a pep in his step, and I'm like, wow, therapy is really working for your boy. Like, Ern has some energy. They've built a rapport, him and the therapist. This therapist, I mean, I would love a therapist like this. I mean, he seems really genuine, really humble, like he's a great listener, non-judgmental. Let's Ern speak, ask the right questions. I mean, he gets an A+ when it comes to his skill as a therapist. And I feel like a lot of people will watch this episode thinking, see, if I had a therapist like that, I would go to therapy. Ern tells the story about why he didn't go to Princeton. So he's like, how was Princeton? He said, I didn't go. Come to find out, they had an issue at the airport. There was a white woman behind the counter who wouldn't let Ern on the plane because he had a beat up passport. And the therapist is like, but it's a domestic flight. And he's like, I know. He was like, she's white. And he was like, do you even have to ask? Which, like, period. You really did it, but you know, it's like you wanted reconfirmation, like why this is happening, because it doesn't make sense. But this thing happens to him. And so Van finds the nearest Black woman who works at the airport, as we do when we need people to actually hear us and understand our situation. This kind woman walks them all the way past the line to security, where TSA is meets them. So it turns out this white airport worker, she called TSA, she called security, and Ern ultimately, he's like, you know what, I'm not gonna go, blah, blah, blah. And Van is upset. They were supposed to have a nice family trip. Their daughter was coming with them. And the therapist is like, how does that make you feel? When they go into that, and Ern is like, you know, I understand the bigger picture of what happened, and you know, it's okay. You know, we'll get our time together soon and such. And the therapist's like, wow, like, he's like, that's fantastic. I'm glad you see the bigger picture here. And Ern tells the therapist, you know, I feel like you've taught me a lot, and I've received some tools, and I think I'm ready to wrap up. Like, I think, not wrap up, but he said, I'm ready to take a short break from therapy. And the therapist is like, you know, I understand if that's how you feel. You know, we'll revisit this when you're ready. Come back to me anytime. And so Ern wraps up therapy. Okay, so that's, like I mentioned before, there are two storylines. At the other side of the storyline, there is a white woman who's a writer. She's a writer. She's spent her whole life writing. She's struggling as a creative, definitely. She's older in age too, so she's been at this for a long time. She gets an email saying, found your manuscript online, love it, let's set up a meeting. She goes to this book agent's meeting, and he's like a typical agent, like Hollywood agent, like sets time, but only really gives her 2 minutes of his actual time, speeds through all of this stuff that she needs to do. He's like, you need PR, you need a stylist, you need this, you need that, and I've already set you up with a gig tomorrow. You're gonna meet a book club publisher, is gonna be there, gonna check you out, she's gonna wear a hat, blah, blah, blah. And he's saying this in like a walk and talk fashion. Having been in the space of like agents and managers and entertainment, like it was so cliche, like agent behavior, and I really felt bad for the woman because I'm like, wow, he's just roping her into all this stuff, not even giving her the decency of like sitting down, explaining the industry, asking her what she wants to do, what's the vision you have for your career. He's like, yeah, so I've already set up A, B, and C, this is what you're gonna do, you're gonna spend all this money that I'm not giving you any advance pay on, blah, 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 but you know, this is gonna be the new Harry Potter, like, which is what agents do. They just like sell you dreams basically, and like guarantees with no actually evidence to back it up. So like that was such a trigger for me watching it. I was like, oh God, don't ruin this woman's life. Find out this woman quit her job, spent all this money, she got her hair done, whole makeover, and we find out that this woman is also down in her luck. She borrows money from, I guess, her sister or her friend. And in this episode, she walks into this reading that this book agent signed her up for this reading. She shows up with a dog. The librarian's like, you can't have a dog here. And then she goes, I work at the airport. I already know this is FAA approved, which immediately bells started ringing in my head. This is the same white woman that gave Ern issues, but he told the story of when he missed the trip to Princeton. I was like, this is the woman. Oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? She sits down to start reading her story to all these black kids, and these kids start trolling this woman. I mean, once I realized that was her, the satisfaction that I felt, does this make me evil? I don't think so. Listen, the satisfaction I felt when these little children were trolling this woman, they were just going in and slowly, one by one, getting up and leaving. The book publisher gets up and leaves, and this woman is sitting there crying. So episode wraps with what is basically a rap party. So we are at a bar and there's footage of this woman crying in her car, and we come to find out that Ern set this whole thing up. This is a woman that played Ern at the airport, and he came back with spite to ruin her life. Something he can do now that he has money, and that's what he chose to do with the money that he's making now off of working with Paperboy, which I thought was really interesting, and I think ties into episode 3 as we get into it. But you know, that episode ends and the last line is, Ern says, I really need to go back to therapy, which is really hilarious. So we think that Ern is like making all these strides, and I'm like, yes, Ern, like, yes, like, you better grow spiritually. And at the end, he does the pettiest thing I have ever heard anyone do. It is truly genius. I felt vicarious revenge. Like, I really did. Like, don't we all wish we could get revenge off people who wrong us, especially when they racially profile you off of just their own racist BS? Like, I'm sure he felt satisfaction for a hot minute at the beginning, you know, and he paid off all these actors, something he could do now that he's making money. That spite is so ugly that you're spending this hard-earned money off of revenge. But really, at the end of the episode, he's like, oh, you know what, spiritually, I'm still unwell, you know? So, all right, that was episode 2, by far my favorite episode. Episode 3 is called Born to Die. And there's no Van or Darius in this episode. Well, Darius shows up at the very end, but we're getting mostly Paperboy and Ern this season for sure, at least first 3 episodes. Starting off with Paperboy's storyline. So Paperboy just performed at a bar mitzvah. I don't know if it's bat or bar, but I'll say bar mitzvah. And there's this guy, this dad who comes out. He's like, listen, I want you to teach my son how to do what you do. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I want you to teach my white son. He doesn't say white son, but this is a white man, white Jewish man. I want you to teach him how you talk, how you walk, how you rap, how you act. I want you to like basically mentor him on how to be you. And Paperboy's like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like, bro, like, you're crazy, until he offers him $1 million. And I was like, fuck. I can't say no to $1 million. What are you asking me to babysit? So he signs up to mentor this little white child. And so he walks into the studio, he agrees. He walks into a studio, finds the guy's kid, his name is Benny. And Benny has the most atrocious black scent I've ever heard in my life. There's a lot of conversation online about Gen Z slang. Like, people are calling AAVE terms that have been used for years and years and now kind of co-opted by Gen Z white kids. They're calling that slang, it's just internet slang or Gen Z slang, when really all of that originated from African American vernacular English. And I find that problematic because it's like you're whitewashing something that existed before you, and you came and you started using it, and we need to define these things culturally, because otherwise you are stealing and not crediting where things originate from, and where to no end. You could use cultural language from other people, but you have to also know where they originate from, because it sounds terrible coming from you, to be honest, like if we really want to get real. So I thought that was hilarious. But Benny says something that's really interesting. He says, I'm Paperboy, and then Benny responds saying, oh, you're the guy my dad bought. Yeah, that was a very, very interesting line that is still like kind of ringing in my head, because it was so jarring when I heard it. Did it hit you as hard as it hit me? Because it hit me very hard, because the implications of you're the guy you're the black man my white father bought, it's giving slave auction, right? It's giving buying people as property, instead of what he could have said easily, which is, you're the guy my dad hired, or your paper boy, which is pretty simple. I thought that choice of words was very interesting. In the studio, Paperboy meets a guy named Bunk, who is working with another little white kid, teaching them how to be black. And Bunk invites Paperboy to this meeting. And Paperboy ends up going. And in this meeting, there is a group of black men, and I believe they're all rappers, or former rappers, or current rappers. And he talks about money and like how to make real money in the music industry. This man gets into the lifespan of a rapper, and I thought this was absolutely hilarious and genius. He says, first step, it's called, what's it called? Young street. Like the first step of being a rapper, come out in the scene, first taste of success, you're young street, you're all swagger, you're all grind, you're all streets, like you're just a street kid, like you're just all heart. Phase 2 of the black rapper is the OG. So now you're a legend, you've reached legendary status, you're an OG, and the guy then tells Paperboy that he's on the cusp of OG, which is scary, because step 3 of the lifespan of a black rapper is family films, which killed me. He said, you are one step away of playing, what is it? He says, you're gonna be Ice Cube's best friend in Are We There Yet 5 in less than a year. He tells that to Paperboy. And Paperboy is like, he's already having this kind of not midlife crisis, but like this existential crisis of what he's doing, why he's doing it, who he's doing it for. And now oh my god, that scared the shit out of me. Scared me so much. He explains that the real money is not in having your career as a black rapper, because you'll never have the fame, the access to money that a young white avatar, meaning you basically build up a young white boy into being you, and you build him to be an avatar of you, except he's white, and building that, you'll reach successes and rooms and money and like access that you never be able to access as a black man. Automatically, I think of people like Jack Harlow. Sorry, you know that meme of Jack Harlow? It's not a meme, but it's a video of him being carried by all these like black people so his shoes don't get dirty. I mean, what better example of young white avatar can you have than Jack Harlow in this industry, in this day and age, like with like 3 average singles and all, he's the it guy in the rap world. I mean, they keep promising all this money, and Paperboy is convinced, he goes, let me try it. So he goes to visit Benny, finds out Benny is performing in a high school. What? I don't even know. He's performing in this high school, finds out that Bunk already signed Benny. And Paperboy's like, damn, he missed his opportunity. Little yodel kid who is from the studio is there. He's very clearly high off drugs, but he's like dressed as a cowboy. None of it makes sense, which I think is the point, that it doesn't make sense that this country looking yodel boy would be a famous rapper, but like that's what could work because it's all fucked up. The boy's like, come on, let me clean you up to the yodel boy. He's like, okay, here's another white boy. If we could really just pick a white boy and teach them how to be me, anyone, any old white boy, then like, let me just take this one that's standing right there, and he's already kind of in the room, so whatever. So he takes him. Next scene, we are at the Grammys. We're at the Grammys, and Bunk is there with Benny. Benny is acting like an idiot, like Benny with his, you know, his black scent. The guy from the meeting is there, the main dude, and Paperboy walks in, and he's like, yo, what are you doing here? He's like, I signed the Yodel kid. We went triple platinum. The single's only been out for 3 weeks, and he's already nominated for a Grammy. Like, that is how fast success. I mean, it's all ridiculous, right? This is all like satire. Like, this is ridiculous. That would never actually happen that fast, you know. 11 days a single is out and he's nominated for a Grammy within those days. It doesn't make sense, but that's not the point, right? Turns out that the kid actually dies right before the Grammys, and Benny's like, oh yeah, it's all, you know, Paperboy's like, where's little Yodel kid? And Benny's like, oh yeah, he didn't know he died. Yeah, it's all over Twitter, but at least we know he's gonna win, basically, or just implies that off the strength of dying, that this kid would win, and this kid ends up winning, okay? Ern's storyline is strange, and I'm still wrapping my mind around it. I'd love to know what you thought of this storyline, because I'm still grappling with it. Basically, he works for a management company, and they're talking about spinning. They have this best-selling author, but this footage came out of her pulling a gun out on a young black kid who was going door to door fundraising for, you know, whatever, you know, fundraising thing, you know, going door to door as people do, trying to raise money. I've done it before. It's a terrible thing that we ask children to do. I absolutely hated doing it. I remember doing it when I was like 13 or 14. I was definitely in high school, and you're telling a child to knock on adults' doors and talk to them. Like, that is not a thing that should ever be done. We should never ask children to knock on strangers' doors asking them for money. Like, whoever's idea that was to start doing that, like, go to hell. Like, honestly, like, that's terrible. Especially me. I remember my experience being a black girl knocking on people's doors. I mean, I was met with some very strange, weird, like, menacing people. I remember being yelled at. I remember people being like, what are you doing here? Like, it was very traumatizing for a 14-year-old little 4'11", 90-pound me. And the fact that we still have children doing that, it doesn't make sense. I would like to just put that out there. Anyways, the management company's trying to spin this racist ass woman so that they can continue to sell her books, and with no care about this young black kid who got a gun pulled out on him. And they're like, all right, ideas, how do we spin this? And the first person was like, let's uncover a checkered past for the kid. And it's like, you're wanting to ruin this child's life so this woman could sell more books so you could make more money. It's just all about money and greed. I mean, that's what this episode is about. I think it's about selling out. It's about money and greed. And Paperboy went the route of the sellout this episode, and Ern didn't. Ern was like, can't we just focus on other signees? And he's like, D'Angelo, I'm assigned D'Angelo, the singer D'Angelo. So he goes on this wild goose chase to find D'Angelo. He like knows someone who knows D'Angelo's braider. He shows up at this bathroom, like this public restroom looking thing. The sign says D'Angelo. It's all strange in like Atlanta fashion. Opens the door, goes inside, and he's stuck there for a week trying to reach D'Angelo. He reaches like the state of nirvana where he goes, what does he say? He says, what is D'Angelo? We are D'Angelo. Let me experience D'Angelo. And the guy who's standing there on guard is like, you said it, like you set the password, whatever. Gets up, opens the door. He goes through this dark tunnel to this guy who's making a peanut butter and chicken skin sandwich. I don't know, Lord. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And he goes inside and realizes it's not D'Angelo. It's some kind of cult weird thing. I don't know, it's not D'Angelo, it's this. I need y'all to explain this one to me, because I feel like I usually understand symbolism and metaphors, but sometimes I think Donald Glover just does things that doesn't necessarily make sense. Like, and I think it's fun for him. Like, he does really ridiculous things on purpose, because he's like, not everything is going to make sense, or not, I can't put everything in a tight little bow, which I find really funny, which I think is the point. But if y'all had some kind of theory of this part of the episode, I'd love to hear it, because Earn then just walks up and leaves. Darius, Paperboy, and Earn meet up at the end of the episode, and I think this is where we really understand kind of the idea behind the episode, or the thesis. The Paperboy says he can't stomach the industry, that it makes him sick, and he asks Earn, how do you do it? And Earn says, it's not about what feels good, it's about what survives. The way in which he says it was very depressing. Like, it's not like something that excites him. Like, Earn has had to do a lot of grimy, shisty things in all of these seasons, and 4 seasons of Atlanta, and he's reached success and he's making money, but he understands that it's like none of that felt good, none of that was morally good or honest or true, you know. It's none of that is coming from like, this is what feels good, this is what feels honest to me. And I think he accepted that a long time ago, and Paperboy, being an artist, being creative, it struggles with that a lot. And he struggles with the idea that being a creative in this industry is not always doing what feels good. You have to do what survives, which means selling out, which means cheating, lying. And being a true artist, you are using your true expression, and that you're committed to honesty, because that's what creativity is. It comes from your honesty. And Paperboy is kind of left there. Earn leaves, and Paperboy is left there kind of having this existential crisis of like, what am I doing? You know, contemplating his decisions, contemplating his career and where he wants to go. And this season is very much about Paperboy, and I think Earn too, figuring out, you know, what's next for them. And so that wraps up episode 3 of Atlanta. So many interesting points, so many great through lines through this season. Final thoughts for season 4 so far. I am so happy that they decided not to do any cutaway episodes for season 4, their last season. I enjoyed it for season 3. I thought it was creative, I thought it was unique, but it being its last season, I really want to see where these characters are going. I really want to see how their storylines wrap up, and it's only, I think, 10 episodes, so we really need to stay with them through the end. So I'm happy we're getting our dynamic trio plus band for this season. Love that they're still going the meme and viral video route. It's nice, it's fun little Easter eggs that Donald Glover is at. I mean, this is what makes the show exciting. It's like, what is he gonna do this episode? And he makes it very exciting to watch the show. I love the Blue Blood through line. I think Blue Blood is gonna stay a theme through the end of this season, and I think that impact of losing him in episode 1 is gonna stay with Paperboy until the end. I love seeing how the industry treats Lil Yodel Kid, who's his rapper. We find out immediately he dies, versus Blue Blood, who we don't even find out he dies until 3 months after his death. Like, and it's on the radio, like, you know, like this thing that nobody really listens to anymore. Like, nobody listens to the radio, and that's how they announce it. So I find that really fascinating. And the kid's album was called Born to Die, a la Biggie's Ready to Die, which I thought was really funny too. Like, a lot of prolific rappers who prophesize their death. Man, I mean, there's so much going on there, like Childish Gambino, like being a rapper, Donald Glover being a rapper himself. I'm sure he has a lot of opinions. He has a lot to say about the music industry and how they treat Black rappers. I'm curious about what's going to go on with Darius and Van this season. We're not getting much of them. Let me know down in the comments how you think their storylines are going to wrap up. And last but not least, I love the theme of this season. So many themes, but ultimately I think this season is about them making it. It's about success and what you do with that success, what success really means. How fulfilled you are once you reach this idea of success, especially if your idea of success or happiness is tied to money, you know, these tangible things versus the intangible. Look at what Ern is doing with his success. He's using his success in the form of money to initiate these like elaborate petty schemes to get revenge on people. Paperboy has success, but he wants more of it. Like he's selling out for $1 million. Like he's doing things that I don't know if season 1 Paperboy would have done, but at least now Paperboy is doing it and realizing he can't stomach it. Like it literally makes him sick, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, this season's amazing so far. Let me know down in the comments what you think. I love to talk about it. I love to really dig in with you. Let's have these conversations because Donald Glover says so much. He says so much. And I love what he has to say. Like I think he has a really unique, important perspective that I want to get into. So let me know what you thought of the season down in the comments. This video is much longer than I thought it would be. I thought it was gonna be like 15 minutes. I'm like nearing an hour right now. Let me know if you like long form content because that's what you got right now. And I was excited. Let me know if you want me to react to the episodes towards the rest of the season. Do you want to like watch it with me? Do you want me to do like a recap and review like this video? So let me know down in the comments what you prefer and what you think of the season, y'all. As always, thank you so much. I am very, very, very grateful to you for watching. Till the next video.